Cody, let's jump into this show tonight. First up, the pre-draft press conference.
Yeah, and listen, I went live today, and I was able to stream this pre-draft press conference. I appreciate everybody for coming through. Got up to 340 something people. Big time turnout. Everybody was interested in hearing what Scott Fitterer had to say. And a lot of people kind of took umbrage with the fact that they decided to do the press conference today,
Kind of
literally
strange.
on the day that they're having both CJ Stroud and Will Levis into the building. A lot of people felt that it was disrespectful to even have Levis be a part of CJ Stroud's day to begin with.
No,
but
why didn't they do the press conference yesterday?
Or even after.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this. We'll start the show with this question, guys. Did the Charlotte media overlook the fact that the Panthers were scheduled to interview Stroud and Levis? They mentioned their names one time in this press conference. It almost felt like, as we watched the 30 minutes that they sat there and asked about the draft process, 28 minutes were dedicated to quarterback discussion, and the entire time felt like the only person people were interested in was Bryce Young. And what I mean by that, the media is only interested in Bryce Young, and the Panthers brass was only interested in Bryce Young. Poor this tweet right here by Ryan Not Reynolds on the block 01, big Panther fan, always a great Twitter follow, by the way. I always put a lot of his stuff on the show. It said, look at this, Stroud and Levis on the bus ride back to the airport. Man, it did not. It felt like they were non-existent.
Yeah, and shout out to Shannon Quick. She was really the only one that even mentioned it. And it's basically because people on Twitter kept on mentioning it. They were like, well, did you just schedule these far out in advance? Like, what happened? And yeah, Fitterer was basically saying, yeah, we've had these scheduled for a long time now, and that they're still in the process of doing their due diligence. However, he would also go on to note that they pretty much know what they're going to do. They haven't outright said to one another, Fitterer and Frank Reich haven't outright said to one another, this is going to be the player that we're drafting, because they still feel like they're going through that process. But they said that they're all pretty close to the same feel as to where they're going to be going when it comes to this number one pick. And Tony, you wanna play a clip first, or how you want to go?
Nah, let's pop into this right now. Right now, I guess this is what this is a bullet point. Tell us what we got here on the screen. Let's go full screen on this and explain to us what this tells us about today's. I guess this is a bit by bit point about today's press conference. Here's the press conference in a nutshell.
Yeah, so basically, Fitterer says that they're finishing the board this week with college scouts, meeting with their coaches later this week, still going through the process on who number one is. Fitterer said they didn't say anything to Bryce Young to cause him to cancel his visits, because that's another thing we're going to talk about. Bryce Young canceled all the remaining visits that he had with all other NFL teams. So that's a pretty big deal. Fitterer said all four quarterbacks still in play for the number one pick.
He must have whispered that.
He whispered that. Anything out. Dude, if you believe that,
yeah, it's like
if you believe that, I have some property on the other side of Mars and I'm interested in selling to you, dude. And I promise I'll give it to you on a good deal. He also said, but this was interesting. I would hate being at number 9 right now, trying to figure this out.
We'd have Levis.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he just said.
Sure. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so this is where it gets down to. He dropped a lot of hints about Bryce Young throughout the course of this entire process. One of them was he was talking about short quarterbacks and balls being batted down at the line of scrimmage, a la Baker Mayfield last year. And he says in Russell Wilson's final year, he had 3 batted passes, and Bryce had 2. So they are literally using every way possible to signal to the fans that they do not care too much about the hype. He would also go on to say that Federer says if there is a disagreement on who the pick will be, Frank and I will make that decision. But he also says he doesn't think that's going to happen.
All right, right here. Let's pause right here on, and I don't use the word pause like whatever these other guys do, which I don't really get. It took me a year and a half to learn what cap meant. I guess I don't care about what the pause thing is. I think I know it is, but let's go to clip number 1 when Scott Fitterer was asked about really and Dan Morgan chimes in on this about who does this size. Are there concerns about it? Right? Is he gonna? I mean, and the only thing that I've said that, and I don't even think that the Panthers, the one thing I guess I don't like about this answer, guys, is that I don't think the size should preclude Bryce Young from being picked. I just think it should be something that you have to talk about and consider. So let's see what they got to say about the size. It feels like it doesn't bother them a bit.
This doesn't seem to be an issue. When you grow up, a shorter quarterback, you learn how to, evolve your game and adapt and see the field. And he's done that, just like CJ's, evolved his game. Will's evolved his game. They all develop, and, there's certain tools that they have, and they learn to play to their strength, and they've all done that.
Yeah, to me, it's a lot more. It's not about so much the height. You got to have those pocket instincts, your ability to slide, find passing lanes. So you got to look at other things like that, and then obviously how smart and how well a quarterback sees the field is also important. So you got to take more than the size into account.
CK, what I heard here is that the size doesn't matter in this case. We're drafting Bryce Young. You got a smart quarterback that knows how to play the game. He's played the game his whole life. I am fine with their rationale of why Bryce Young can overcome the size difference, but I'm not sure that they're acting like it's like being taller wouldn't be advantageous either.
I don't think that's. I mean, I think that they're saying that you develop different styles of being able to adapt with what your body type is. I think that's really what they're saying. What I found to be most impactful with what you just heard there, and there's multiple times during this interview that they did this, he mentioned 3 names. There was one person that was removed from that list, Anthony Richardson. He didn't even talk about Anthony Richardson at all today. Multiple times Scott Fitterer answered a question, and he responded with names specifically regarding Young, CJ Stroud, and Levis, but always seemed to leave out Anthony Richardson in every one of his statements regarding, the improvements that they've made, things like that, right? So I think the most important statement that we saw there is the lack of a name being mentioned.
Yeah, throwing this over to you, Cody, and building off of what CK said. Mm-hmm. One of the things I gather from Bryce Young is in how polished he is that the stage in that moment from day one is not going to be a difficult adjustment, or will be less difficult of an adjustment for him to assume that role and all the pressure that comes with the number. I think they're so confident in his ability to step in from day one. It almost feels like they're just more interested. Well, they're not interested in winning what it's going to be like in 2 or 3 years. It's like, hey, it feels like a really right now moment too. And I'm not trying to say that he can't be good in the long run. I don't know if are they becoming a little too infatuated with what he offers from day one?
Well, I mean, listen, I think you have to put into context a little bit how bad our owner wants to win football games, and how things have turned out in recent years, where basically every single year David Tepper thought that he was going to have the team to make a playoff push the past couple of years in a row, and we weren't even close to it. So it is something to be said that Bryce Young, out of all of the quarterbacks right now, is the most capable of being able to step up and be able to play meaningful football right away. You also heard them mention, especially Dan Morgan, the subtle pocket movements. That there are things that you can do as a quarterback to make sure that defenders aren't getting in your throwing lanes, that you're able to move just enough that way you can see out in front of you.
What
and all
Baker
of those
couldn't do.
Right. And everything that Baker couldn't do is something that Bryce Young can do. And also, like, let's not pretend they're, okay, we saw Baker Mayfield last year. We also saw PJ Walker. PJ Walker didn't have anywhere near the problems with batted passes that Baker Mayfield did. So there is a technical aspect to this. It's not as simple as, short quarterback equals batted passes. That's far too simple for us to just put it that way. And Bryce Young has all the necessary traits and attributes to be able to mitigate those types of things happening to him.
I don't like to call him a short quarterback as much as just diminutive stature, right? Is that it's just like he looks like a teenager. And you know what? He's only 21. To be fair, he is only 21.
Yeah, he's 2 years removed from actually being a teenager.
Yeah, but he looks like someone that would hang out with my son. It looks like a senior at my kid's high school, kind of almost. And now when it comes to his size, it's not just about being short. And so, seeing over the linemen is some things is more, but also being able to hold up against the Calais Campbell. And this is what I saw you mention this on the draft show that you guys did this past week, the creator draft. This is something that Mike Florio brought up when talking to Chris Sims, is that at some point he's going to go up against the Calais Campbell, who is 10 inches tall, is like 10 inches taller than him, and 100 pounds heavier. Now, will he be able to? There are ways you can mitigate that and some different things. But I tell you, is that one good thing? Hey, running backs sometimes benefit from not being able to be seen over the line. Maybe these defensive ends just won't be able to see them.
And
Where is this guy? Where is this kid?
And the fact that they're gonna have to reach so far down to be able to get him in,
It's just gonna be hit to the head after hit to the head. Boom, flag. But the question is there some room? And I do think it's a fair point to say is that we're not always talking about what you are, what you will be. Now let's go to clip 2, because Scott Fitterer was asked about this and asked about his size. And sometimes is that Joe Person comes in here and brings this in. And Cody, you have been pretty clear in saying this, that, and I think you said this to David Geddes maybe last week on the show. It's not the height necessarily and just bad at balls, but can that frame stand playing with the big boys? Joe Person asked him about his playing weight and how they're going to do this. This is what Scott Fitterer has to say.
Is that a concern for durability and longevity?
Yeah, I think, nutritionally we can do some things to educate him. We get him in the weight room. You can see when you really look at his lower body has gotten bigger. He's put on a lot of mass down there. A lot of times quarterbacks don't want to lift upper body because you get a little bit bound up. But there's some things he's going to naturally put on size as he ages as well. Again, going back to Russ, I think he came out at 200. Maybe he might have been 206 pounds. He's at 220 now. Guys just grow. That's something he can control, and that's something we can help him with. We can't control the height.
Okay,
I'm not sure this is really
it isn't
the most accurate discussion here, or a great comparison.
It didn't look good for him. Yeah,
well, it isn't, and I want to say this, that I feel like people have such a faulty idea of like how putting on muscle mass actually works, right? If you're a shorter guy, yeah, you can bulk up, but Bryce has a naturally smaller frame than compared to the guys that he's talking about. Dude, say what you want about Matt Corral. The guy is like 3 inches taller than him, and now he's up to 220 pounds. Just because you have some other quarterbacks that can bulk up, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be able to fit that much functional
or if that even
muscle
really would
mass.
help him all that much in some cases, like
yeah,
maybe it's just being bigger alone, or it's being diminutive in stature, just
it
fragility.
might be his best playing weight to be around 195 pounds, 200 pounds. And listen, I'm not doubting that an NFL strength and conditioning system
Isn't
bulk
going to
him up
add
a
on
little
10
bit.
pounds or something.
Yeah, I mean,
but
like,
don't
I'm,
expect him to
I'm,
be 225 one day. And
yeah, like I don't think that he's ever going to be up anywhere near 220 pounds. You know, he's not a very
and Russ looks heavy. Didn't you guys remember what the guy said? The former, it was the former one of the DBs or something for the Seattle Seahawks, and he wasn't even trying to be mean about Russ. He said he looks in good shape on the field, but you see him in the locker room, he's like a sack of potatoes. But Russ was older too. Here's the other thing: is Russ, when he came out and came into the NFL, he was not 21. He had already played like pro baseball or baseball. He played 4 years in college.
He transferred from NC State to Wisconsin. Yeah. He had been around. So yeah, I don't like, even think of someone like Jonathan Stewart, right? Built like a running back, but he's around the same height. Well, just because they're around the same height doesn't mean that they have a similar frame and build. And I don't know. I just don't really buy into that. I do not think that that Bryce
he's gonna have great hips when we're done with him.
Yeah, like I don't know. I know Bat Daddy's chomping at the bit. Go ahead, Greg.
No, I mean, this all comes down to what I was saying before, and the coach just said it right there about you can't teach size. I mean, we always complained about Cam Newton, and it's kind of a Shaq effect, how he got graded differently. He got calls called differently. Is it going to work the other way with a smaller guy? Are we going to get more calls on roughing the passer? Yeah.
They're going to say, he got killed, dude.
But hold on.
Ejected.
Like, I think that'd be great, but do you guys really think that'll happen? Like,
yes.
You really think so? Like, or in my opinion, I'm looking at like an RG3 type deal. When RG3 came out, man, he was talked about like he was the next big thing.
He was such a runner, though.
He was Cam Newton, but smaller, better in mind, and he could do better with more things. And RG3 lasted 2 years. He was a runner, though. Bryce Young is just going to have to hold up in the pocket. And that's what it is probably take the chance.
Because wait until you hear him on the pivot.
Take the chance.
He doesn't care why you even say that, dude. It's crazy.
The prize is no greater, no matter what you pick.
Are taking him, man.
No greater. I guarantee you, CJ Stroud cannot win a lesser Super Bowl than Bryce Young can. There is no greater Super Bowl to win. Why take the chance?
Hey,
it doesn't make any sense to me.
I just want to say real quick, a big time thank you to our boy, Just Don't Care, who gave another 5 gifted super fans to Michael Davis, Lynn Leonhardt, Scott Thomas, Kenneth, Girth Brooks, Blind Panther Vlogs, and Fitness for Life. We appreciate you,
so
man.
It tells you who gets them?
Yeah, it tells you who gets them. Yeah.
That's awesome. I just looking at the StreamYard comments, and you don't get all that extra information. Man, that is fantastic. Being a supporter of the C3 Panthers podcast, you are already doing it by being here, by hanging out in the chat, by smashing the thumbs up button, subscribing. Check us out on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher. Go back, check out David Geddes' interview if you missed last week. It was really incredible. I know that I have a soft spot for kind of these I don't know, the fan story guys. You know what I'm saying? Is like the Demir Bird speak to me. I've been a Cameron Artis Payne fan. I was a Ben Wickery fan, and I think he was a victim of circumstance. David Geddes was one of those guys who really showed so much promise in a bad situation, and just was derailed by injury and timing. It shows you luck and timing. And speaking of injury and what Greg is potentially fearful here, but you know what? He's a big giant guy, and he got injured, and his career was ruined, or cut very short. We won't say ruined, but the interview was so great. You guys can support the show by just going back, listening, checking us out, subscribing, leaving a review on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher. Let people know, man, this show has been rocking, and we're in our 11th year. You can call into the show at 252-228-5098.